Catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.
It's become a tradition for us to every year look at the different areas in tech and ancillary sectors, to look at the trends that shaped the sector and to look at the trends from that sector that shaped other areas of tech or other areas generally. And in this episode, we would be looking at marketing. And I don't know if we should actually merge marketing and advertising, or if we just concentrate on marketing. Maybe marketing with a sprinkling of advertising. I would also like to know when I start speaking with the guests I have today, I'd also like to know where we draw the line, because I have the experts here with me. I have Onyeka Nwobu. He is a seasoned brand and innovation strategist and management advisor with over 8 years of experience. And also I have Susan Aniefiok, a media specialist at Media Fuse Dentsu Aegis Network. But then I would also want them to introduce themselves and give us an idea of the kind of work that they're into, so that we better understand what they're into before we get into the conversation. Where do I start with? Onyeka. Yes. Hi, Onyeka. It's good to have you here.
Hi, Tony. Thanks for having me. Okay, so my name is Onyeka Nwobu, and I am, as Tony has mentioned, a brand strategist. I am also a management advisor, youth educator, and I'm also a women development consultant. And I am, I run a platform called SIT Global, which stands for Strategists in Tech. And what we do is we are a professional education platform that supports African tech companies, ecosystem enablers, and professionals to effectively achieve business growth and optimize for scale through our localized expertise and trainings that focus on strategy and branding. So that's me in a nutshell.
Strategies in tech. Okay, that's good. Interesting. Thank you. And Susan, hi, let's meet you.
Okay, hi. So Susan Aniefiok, as rightly mentioned. I work in the advertising space, and basically I handle brands, account management, and involve account management of brands and strategy. So when I mean account management, I'm talking about from strategy to planning, even up to the point of deployment. So basically that's what I do. And I manage a team in planning and strategy. And what else? I'm a lover of God. I'm a Christian. I think that's it.
Okay, beautiful. Now that we've met Susan and Onyeka, we'll stick to first names. Where do we draw the line between marketing and advertising? Susan, you're more into advertising, and Onyeka, you're more into marketing, I'm guessing. Where do we draw the line? Where exactly is the line? Susan first, then Onyeka.
So I'll say advertising is a fragment of marketing. So we have the understanding. So there's really no line to draw, because it is from the marketing budget that you will now derive what budgets will go into advertising. So I'll say that they work hand in hand, because one aspect affects the other aspects.
Onyeka.
Yeah, I think to support what Susan is saying is it's really hard to sort of pull them apart, although they are quite distinct in their own ways. You can't do marketing without actually advertising. So I don't see how that's going to work. I do think, however, from a marketing point of view, there's a very heavy play on even like the use of psychology. It's more a scientific process. It's more technical. It deals largely with numbers. That has to do more with numbers. I'm sure that advertising, it all sits into each other. But when you're dealing with marketing, you are bordering the line of, a science that has to do with psychology, like really understanding people's triggers, consumers' triggers, and all of that. So yeah, I would say while you can't really take advertising out of marketing, there is a distinctness, and as she mentioned, you derive your advertising from whatever marketing or whatever marketing strategy you put together. So yeah.
Okay. Now, for people, I would describe them as maybe the public or the masses. Most times, whether it's something that's in marketing or if it's just advertising, they usually are not aware of what happens behind the scenes. Yeah, because most people who make these things happen, either in products, persons, services, it's just the final work that you see, and whatever you see, that's really what it is. Onyeka, what really stood out for you as someone who is practicing in the space? What stood out for you in 2023? What were the things that shaped marketing according to your viewpoint in 2023?
So I come largely from the field, or my focus would be in brand. So my observations would lean a lot largely towards brand marketing, because there are different types of marketing. And things that stood out to me is, in brands or companies, trying to market themselves to people, a lot more emphasis on community building. Now, community building has been something that it's been a thing for a long time. It's not today that it started, but I couldn't help but notice how brands using the fact that they have a community of people to actually sell what it is that they're selling. And it's more like, if you think about it, people putting together a band of advocates or a band of people who would refer the business. So I couldn't help but notice how a lot more strategies leaned towards that, as opposed to like maybe the other tactics that were being used in the previous years. Another thing I would say is there's a subtlety in which like companies in tech are actually selling themselves or have sold themselves this year. There's been a subtlety, and it's almost like if you don't look closely, you actually don't know. So, and I see this more from the viewpoint of founder branding, and how you don't really know that, the way that the founders are being positioned or them being really put in your face. I had made this prediction earlier this year, and I said that there will be the rise of founder branding. And the reason why is that we're seeing, or we saw that a lot less people, like when they go to company, brands are not in anymore, if I can say so. Like, it's only a mark of credibility to say, like, okay, yes, I built my company's brand, but people are looking for more human connection, especially when you're dealing with Africans. Africa is a very emotion driven place. So they're looking for who they can connect to. They want somebody that, and there's also, like, I think something that has influenced this is also the need for accountability, right? Especially in tech, because we hear like all these, like, it can stem from the huge raises and, all of these things. And, when they're able to see the founders, I think it gives a better, or it connects them better to whatever is being built. It can be the founders or it can be the leaders, but that would be something that I really observed it's really caught my eyes. There are so many of them. And even when you look at it from an investment perspective and how the investors sort of even position the founders out there as well, it's not just a thing of the companies doing it themselves. And I think like more use of storytelling marketing than, because we're in tech, there's a tendency to lean towards figures and numbers and data and all of that. But what we're seeing that is slowly coming or gradually coming up, just the emphasis on storytelling marketing. And I think that even from, again, I see these things from a multi-pronged view. So there's me looking at it from the lens of the customers, there's me looking at the lens of from the companies and the employees themselves, and also from the investors, because it's a whole chain of people. Even investors are demanding more storytelling, because what exactly are you selling, and like how does it even make you that different from the other person? So those would be things that I found interesting. There's something else, but I'll save that for later. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm really curious as to what you're saving for later. So, Susan, Onyeka says community building is something she noticed. Brand leader or founder branding, yeah, that's quite subtle. And storytelling marketing. Susan, for the kind of companies you've worked with and the kind of projects you've worked on, from maybe December 2022 till November 2023, what exactly have you noticed that has been very, very important or big in the marketing/advertising space?
Okay, so we've always clamored that the industry is customer centric. So this year we saw a lot of that. All brands trying to, like she said, community building, all brands trying to have human connections, see how to tell stories more interestingly. What I would say really stood out for most of the brands that I've worked on is we had a lot of AI. For example, so tech, I'll call out tech. So we had a lot of initiative around AI. For example, we had AI filter on Snapchat and what have you. And it was a key initiative that most of the brands had to key into to ensure that they leverage and of course communicate with their consumers. And we saw a lot of influencer marketing. We've heard of this in the past, but this year it became top notch. It was almost everything we're talking about. From I would say, example, one of my brands is currently hosting a game show using Twitter, where they have to bring a lot of influencers to drive this conversation on and offline. So a lot of influencer marketing was top notch as well for this 2023. And another thing that I would say actually shaped the industry for big brands. Let me not generalize. For big brands, I would say this year we saw AppCon coming with some sort of regulations that had to shape some of the advertising content on TV. One example would be for most global brands, big brands now, that during the World Cup, we had some sort of constraint getting some sort of communication approved because there were new communication on new policy basically around foreign models. That also shaped the advertising sphere because some brands couldn't advertise. They had to look for other means to advertise, and in a way it affected, I'll say, our budget or spend for 2023.
Very interesting. I like that where I'm getting these thoughts from Onyeka and then these thoughts from you too. For clarity, AppCon, for those who will be hearing AppCon for the first time, AppCon is an Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria, right?
I thought you were saying advertising regulatory.
It's the Advertising Practitioners Council, yeah?
It's not regulatory council.
Okay. So AppCon now.
So right now they're trying to. Sorry, I'm cutting you short. So before now it was basically traditional media.
Okay.
So right now they're trying to ensure anything communication. So they've delved really into the advertising space, the digital space rather, and they're trying to sanction or vet. Let me be fair and say they're trying to regulate, censor what is being put out there. So that's why they had to change their names so that they are all encompassing. It's not just traditional media.
Okay, beautiful. And we will get to the regulatory activities and how we think we fared in 2023. Now, to community building, and Onyeka, you can speak to this, and Susan can also, speak to this. But before 2023, it might just be me. But I used to think that community building is just, you just get, data of people, and then, add them up on a WhatsApp group or, just have them on Telegram and share information with them. Have we broadened the scope of what community building is and what really, where exactly are the borders? You say this is community building.
Yeah, I think it's really evolving. You're right. Before it's we would get a list of people, or we would grow maybe if it's our email database or if it's the Telegram database. But you're going to, if you look around, you're going to see a lot more. I think we should say more community engagement actually would be a more ideal term for it, because you're seeing people even a lot of what has happened has gone beyond we have the list. There's more in-person gatherings of these actual communities. There's more in-person engagement with people. There's been so many events, like everywhere you look there's people just bringing communities together to actually engage them. And so I think that we have moved past the stage of a list. So I have a group of people who are actually strong advocates for my business or my company, or I have or I'm building out a relatively strong ecosystem for maybe if it's an agenda or whatever it is that I'm involved in or my business is involved in. So I think that the community members are a lot more engaged with the brands than we were seeing before. So I would say that it's evolving, and I'm also keeping an eye out for how it evolves further, if I can say so.
Okay, interesting one there. Because okay, I will just leave that conversation about community because I know that, oh God, a lot of people have talked about or made comments. It's been one of the buzzwords of 2023. Yes, it's one of the buzzwords of 2023. Now, let's take a look into AI. Susan mentioned AI. How much has AI impacted the work that those in the marketing and advertising space, like the work that is being done within that space?
I like that Suzanne brought up AI. I think just from my lens, two key things like I would have noticed is just more use or more leaning on AI from a marketing perspective, leaning on AI more from a content creation point of view, and also it's having a human touch. So you're going to see there's lots of brands who are playing around with AI, and like even if it's adding that human touch, but then it looks like a little gamified. I'm sure you saw pictures of people who said, "Oh, this is what AI did," or things like that. This is what AI did to my photo, or things like, or even like, "Oh, I took a headshot and then I was able to AI gave me the rest of the clothes or whatever." So it's stuff like that I've observed. And with brands, I think there's a lot more leaning towards it. It goes beyond visual content in terms of the writing. Like my team, ChatGPT is huge for my team, and I like even copy AI. There's lots of teams like leaning on even Notion. So let's even talk about operations management as well, like Notion being able to even manage teams inside of these type of tools as well. That like all of the type of tools that we use here in West Africa are popular with the founders or the companies here, embedding AI to sort of make it easier and faster. And I think to reduce a lot of dependency on like human, because for things that can be done relatively faster, to reduce that dependency. But I also think that if we look at it contextually, in Africa, there's also for cost effectiveness when we speak about like content creation or using it for maybe customer relationship management systems or all of that. There's also the concern of cost effectiveness. I feel like for AI to be able to do those things in the speed of light that one person or a group of people would take so much time to do, business owners are factoring that in, right? I think the only concern is the people who are, because AI it doesn't function just by itself. It has to be operated by a human being. So the concern mostly has just been around like people understanding prompt engineering, the professionals understanding prompt engineering and all of that. Another thing I would say like has been popular with AI that I've seen like as a trend is, and this is contextually to Africa, is like native language processing. So I've seen this a lot more in the agriculture space. So where a lot of them have to reach like rural areas with farmers, and how they to be able to engage with farmers and be able to make them their customers. So when these people don't have access, like smartphone penetration is not very high there. So how do they even communicate with what's it called? So AI is able to make native language processing easier, so that the whatever the people in maybe Lagos, if they're speaking English, the people maybe in the north can process. I think there's an actual company, I'm forgetting their name now, that they won an award or something like that for building out its native language processing app. I think so. So yeah, that's a lot of what I've noticed with AI as regards to the context of how it's being used or how it is impacting the African tech ecosystem.
Now, Onyeka, if this is just me thinking out loud,
Yeah,
if teams that work with brands are
yeah,
using AI to generate content, whatever the
yeah,
content is, either it's strategy content for strategy,
yeah,
or for content use, per se,
yeah.
are we thinking of the impact
It,
it would have on
yeah.
the feedback or the outputs that
Mhm,
expected output from the client end?
mhm. So I want to understand the question correctly. Are we thinking about the quality of the work that comes out leveraging AI and how that impacts the feedback that we get?
Yes, and maybe originality.
Original, yeah, I think yes. So the thing about it again, it's why prompt engineering, AI doesn't work on its own. It's not that you use AI and then everything you get. So let me start with prompt engineering, for instance. If you go and say like, oh, you want to create something for a brand, first of all, you as the human being actually have to understand the brand. You have to be able to communicate to the AI like, this is actually what I'm going for. And AI, there's no amount of technology that is without flaw. So if AI gives you something back, it is also due diligence for you as a marketer to be able to sit down and really go through it and make your tweaks and changes to make sure that it's aligned. Because at the end of the day, when you're dealing with brand, you're dealing with soul. And so you can't rely on automation to give you soul. You have to sort of come back and do your due diligence. So the way we talk about due diligence with investors is the way that we should start advocating for due diligence with even marketers. When you use AI, because it is a helpful tool, the job is to give you structure and to give you structure with speed. It's not to give you the heart of what it is that you're trying to write or what it is you're trying to communicate. I don't think that AI can actually help you develop the actual strategy itself, because I work in strategy and I don't think that it can do that for you. It can just give you a way, it can help you think about what it is that you're doing faster and give you the structure. So I think about that. I can't speak to if all teams leveraging AI are thinking about it, or if they're just saying let's move as fast as possible, because we know how the tech space can be. It's speed. I don't know that they're thinking about it in that regard, but I'm sure that in some cases AI would be a tool that has positive impacts, in the marketing of a company, and in some cases it might be having negative impacts because it's not being utilized properly. So it's a usage concern.
Susan, what are your thoughts about this? How has AI impacted internally the work that you do, the process, the output? And tell us a little bit more about, how the initiatives around AI, maybe just a little bit more details about how this, happened this year.
I was going to say that AI does not work in isolation. So it works closely with the person that is manning it, just like every other machine or computer, just like your laptop. So you cannot just start typing on his own. You have to direct it in a way. So basically, it gives you idea. Just to further portray what Onyeka said, it gives you idea how better you can do the work, and of course considering speed. Because if we, for example, now for content, now if you're going to start, you have to first brainstorm, think about how you want to write an idea and or a subject matter, for instance. With the help of AI, it will give you ideas of how to now make it better. So it's left for the person to modify it. I just like to portray a point. So it's not like he's out there on his own doing what he's supposed to be doing. So how it has helped us as a company or as a brand. I don't want to mention one of my brands, but we actually leverage it for one of my brands, and we had a filter where we have artifact on one side of the face and the other face was your face. So it helped us gather engagement, and it was across borders. So it wasn't just in Nigeria. We could transcend beyond Nigerian border. We relate with other people in African markets, and then it was an initiative that was largely driven by AI, and it was a good one because it helped us to garner engagements for the brand, and we even entered it for an award, and it was a good one because we were shortlisted basically in Cannes. So, like she rightly said, it has affected how content is created. So right now, you have creative directors and copywriters who have to think outside the box because you do not want me to give your job to a machine. So you have to challenge yourself. So it's not like those days where a copywriter just comes up with an idea. So right now, it's actually challenging copywriters to do more, to think outside the box, and come out with something unique, with or without AI. Yeah. So, and for data, like I remember on this call before we started, Onyeka's pilot wanted to join. So he helps us to gather data. If I need to gather information on some persons, it can help me do that. So basically, it helps us to fast track things that would take usually days to do, or maybe hours to do. It could be done in less amount of time. Yeah.
Very, very interesting points. As much as AI became a buzzword in 2023 for across, sectors, something that is quite interesting is the fact that both of you also mentioned storytelling and human connection, and the fact that we're emotional, we're driven by our emotions. Putting that side by side, it just means that there's like this wonderful tech that's like doing a lot of things that seems like it's going to replace humans, but it still feels like we can't do without that human connection. Let's talk a bit about experiential marketing. For those who haven't heard about it yet or who have no idea what it is about, was this a thing in 2023? And if it was a thing, how? And Susan or Onyeka, anyone can speak to this.
Yeah, I'll go. I think, experiential marketing. I'm coming from an advertising background, and what we would define experiential marketing typically is, whether it is offline at that time. And I think I've seen it in tech. I think this thing is really nuanced because maybe also where it's coming from, was more corporate clients and all of that. And yes, everybody does have tech, but some companies hone in more. And what I've seen is in tech, it's a little more nuanced. So yes, there has been more emphasis. The thing about experiences, when you say experiential and you talk about experiences, is humans they live for the experience, and that's because at the end of the day, humans care more about. They never forget how you make them feel. So that's the end goal. People are aiming to make people feel something. Like, what can I make you feel? And that varies according to brands, right? So I think coming off of, the old school style of what is experiential marketing, I've seen it play out in a digital and then like offline type of, setting. I think when we speak about this whole community engagement again, and that's when we now look at maybe experiential as like an offline thing, and even I should say this offline or online, to be honest, because when we think about this community engagement thing that we keep saying, what brands have been doing is creating experiences for customers, right? And that has been the running theme of this year. It's like because there's been the battle of how much longer can I keep your attention as a customer? That's what the battle has been about. How much longer? And the battle is very fierce because especially in West Africa, and especially I want to say in West Africa, in the whole of Africa, but like in Nigeria, because what is fighting for people's attention, there's too many things, and I dare say not even good things. So what you're trying to do is that how much longer can I keep this person focused on me? So I've seen that happen. I'm seeing back to back brands are doing virtual, then they'll pair it with offline, then they'll do virtual and pair it with offline. So that's what's been happening, and it's been a huge trend. And I want to say that it's not just been brands from a company point of view. You're even seeing this in the investment space is actually also, and I think maybe they're also setting the pace, because when I think about it, aren't they the ones sort of giving the lot of the founders the guidance, the strategic guidance that they're actually leveraging? So yeah.
Susan, what do you think?
Okay, so like Onyeka rightly mentioned, experiential marketing is both ways, online and offline. you witness influencers doing giveaway. That's them trying to create experience, and they want to remain the most talked about so that they can trend as well. And when brands are looking for one influencer to use, their names will pop up. So influential marketing is basically about creating experiences, and these experiences are supposed to live. Your consumers are supposed to live with them. They're supposed to take them wherever they are going to. So in a way, it has impacted marketing largely. If you remember the Coca-Cola story where they had to write your name, it was a massive campaign and Coca-Cola sold out. So it was just because of that initiative, they were creating experiences for people. Okay, you just wanted to personalize your name. The brand sold out, and that year their marketing budget, of course, went up. I'm sure in the next year they will be attributing more to advertising. You know, in a way, marketing influences advertising budgets. Once you sold, the next year you sold enough bottles of Coke. The next year you're going to pump more money into it because you also want to outdo yourself or outdo competition, because competition is going to come back. And also, like Onyeka correctly said, is a battle of top of mind. So the next year another brand is going to come and try to sway the airspace and ensure that the attention is all on him or her. So basically, this goes a long way to affect advertising in terms of budgeting, in terms of competition, what other brands are going to be doing. So in the long run, it affects employment and the likes, because that means it's going to open up the industry and people are going to want to spend more. And of course, you can see a lot of TikTokers. Everybody's trying to drive content. Everybody's trying to be popular. Everybody's trying to be relevant. And as a result of all of these experiences, because they want to remain relevant, as the case may be.
Yeah, I agree with Susan. I think we've touched on some point. I think the one thing I do, sort of see differently is how it influences advertising. So when we go back to Coca-Cola, something that Coca-Cola has done, and I want to say that maybe this is the one trend I've been observing. When we look at the West African market, there's a lot more. I think now a few of them are catching up to it, and I really think this is largely driven by what investors are demanding, because you dance to the tune of who is funding you. But we don't see a lot of brands, like we call them brands, but really I guess they are brands, but like we don't see a lot of intentional branding with companies in tech. It's not a thing. There's a lot of marketing, and if we look at tech, there's more growth marketing than there is brand marketing. And we can talk about how that is really impacting why we have an average lifespan of 18 months, for startups to live in Africa generally, right? We're not seeing a lot of intentional branding. But when we go back to people like Coca-Cola, I don't really think that it necessarily is going to say an increase in budget, because if people do actually build brands, it really shaves off how much you spend on marketing and advertising. And there's the Coca-Cola story. Okay, so Coca-Cola has been building a brand and then built evergreen advertising campaigns. And one time they tested an evergreen campain to see if their customers would still be engaged. And I think their sales really shot up after they reran one of their evergreen campaigns, right? And the numbers went up. And so that actually cut down on their marketing costs that year. I'm forgetting the year, but there's a case study on it, and maybe I'll find it on YouTube and share it. So I don't necessarily think, I think that it increases marketing budget if there's no brand. I think that it cuts down advertising and marketing budgets if there is brand. So I think that this whole creating experiences, because where do we get experiences from? Experience is gotten from brand. Some experiences will be better than the other, and the only thing that makes one experience better than the other is like how much intentionality people put into a brand versus the other people who don't put that much intentionality, or who don't have as much soul, or who don't have a brand. So that is where I sort of stand differently with what Susan has shared. I guess, if we look at numbers and we see that there's more in terms of advertising budgets, or even like relatively like hard marketing budgets, because something that I'm seeing is how companies can relatively, if you build a brand, it does save you money in the long run, and you can actually focus more on a more sales-driven approach than a marketing and advertising approach, which means you're just focused on making money at the time because the brand is already speaking for you and you've already captured, customers' hearts, and you're you built loyalty and you have equity in people's minds.
So one place that
sorry.
Yeah, sure, Susan.
So I like the fact that you said that you sort of disagree, but I was just trying to emphasize the point that when you over deliver, you as a brand, competition is going to try to outsmart you. So if you want to go back to the Coca-Cola story, you might say that somehow I worked on the brand by extension, so I know what I'm saying. I'm not just talking voice. You don't need to say all of that. But I can tell you for a fact that after that campaign, Pepsi, the other cola brands, changed their marketing initiative. They looked for something to do to ensure that they could drive top of mind conversation that period, because it was going to be a big deal for them to overcome what competition has done, which is Coca-Cola. So in the long run, it might not impact directly on that brand, but in the advertising space or the industry, it will impact, which is what I just wanted to point out. Thank you.
Okay, Onyeka, are you fine with this? We can move on from this.
I hear her on competition coming up. That's a given. I think just for me, it's at the end of the day, you have actually saved money, and I think that's we're aligned. I just think like where I'm coming from is
different.
Different. It's from a different angle. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move to social media. Yeah. What did we notice in on social media across platforms, right, as marketers? And I know that Susan already mentioned that influencer marketing was a big deal this year. Susan, what else did you notice? And what about influencer marketing did it? And Onyeka, what about social media, was good for branding this year?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think Susan should go.
Okay, so I know we've spoken about community building and engagement. Mm-hmm. So the usual, if I'm to talk about sports now, we have fans, and not just sports now. So music, for example, we have the Wizkid and the Davido fans, and you know what they do? They try to idolize or defend. The work basically is to defend or advocate for the brands. So because some of these influencers are big and they have this large community of following, so basically you leverage the following to impact or to engage, and basically you leverage their following to engage with consumers. And because most of them are trending every day, they are doing a whole lot of things to ensure that they are in the faces of these your consumers. So you need them to help you speak, advocate, because somehow your consumers listen to them and they have a large network of consumers that you want to leverage or that you want to communicate with. So it was a big one for us. We saw a lot of content, even though Akon clamped down on most of them, but then it was big for us because as brands, these guys are here to stay and they have the following, and you need the following to activate whatever campaign you want to activate, especially when it comes to for entertainment. Say for example, you have an event, you want people to come for your party, they have the followers, they have the network, and then you have to leverage them. So I would say that influencer marketing was quite influential this year and is here to stay. So you'll be seeing a lot of people doing all sorts because they want to remain in the limelight and they want to be popular so that they can become ambassadors.
Okay, and just a follow-up to this would be, for the influencers themselves, what has the relationship been between the influencers, those who act as influencers on the social platforms, and the marketers?
I laugh. Okay, so I was to be candid. I'll try and be economical with my words because, of course, don't know where this podcast is going to get to. So usually I would just reference a celebrity relationship with the fan. Sometimes it looks like that, where some of them understand exactly what they're supposed to do and how to go about it. Why some are just there for the money. You're paying me and I'm to do your job, and sometimes they do not even come back to you. So you can say they know they're supposed to do the job, but they really do not. They're not as passionate as you are. They're not as passionate. They're just tools, and that is how we should see them and use them basically, because they're celebs and sometimes they feel they're doing you some good. So the relationship is not, for some, it depends. It's mutual exclusive, while some is one-sided. So I guess I'll just stop there.
Okay, interesting. If they're getting the job done and you're getting the job done on your own end and the results are coming in well, to some extent, that's quite a good one, right?
Yes.
Okay, let's leave that at that and not dig any further. Onyeka, what are your thoughts? Social media and marketers in 2023?
I think for me, what I've observed is a lot more. I mean, we've seen why, or we finally understand why Instagram was so heavy, or they were so insistent on rivaling TikTok with Reels. And so short form video marketing has been I would say, because like it's almost like no other form of marketing on social is working anymore, except you stand in front of a camera and make it like 10 seconds. So there's also marketers really trying to be able to, that 10 seconds is like most people's attention span is just 10 seconds now, So yeah, that's what I observed. There's definitely like more face time with customers, consumers. I think the IG live, maybe the only year that probably rivals this is like 2020, when everybody was like at home and
COVID, yeah,
COVID time. Maybe that's the only time that rivals it, but like everybody is, like there's always a live for every hour, like as you're sitting down. So there's definitely more. There's more face time with consumers. There's more audio time. I'm seeing this to be relatively different in terms of, I guess some people are merging both. I was going to demarcate or sort of separate it in terms of like B2C, sort of using like the FaceTime as an approach, and B2B sort of going like the audio routes, but then also seeing how like an audio can mean podcast, it can mean Twitter. People are basically even converting stuff that they speak on into podcasts, right? So yeah, I think that those are the key things that I have observed. There's still definitely like a lot more writing and like people wanting to actually see reports and stats and things like that in tech space. So I know that statistics, data, visualizations are really huge, like when it comes to the tech space. So content that has to do with data and really just showing what's happening across the continent in the different regions. That's something that we're seeing. And then also like reports and I would say short form articles that really just like capture what people are saying, but then people are being creative about it in terms of maybe spinning them into carousels and things like that. So yeah.
So we've all lamented everyone doesn't seem to have enough time to consume long form content. As people who work in the marketing and advert space, have we contributed to this?
I don't know if to say we have contributed or it's a thing of demand is really what is driving the supply, because when you even think about it, how before we used to want to just post like one banner, and one banner would be enough, but engagement would drop, and then you see like maybe 20 people like your what's it called, or engage with it, or you have fewer comments. And so I think it's more people. I think in terms of the consumers, it's more variety is spice of life. So people demanding different, like demanding more from marketers. Oh, be more creative. Oh, be this, be that. But what I would really say about this is, while demand is driving supply, some people have stuck to their way of doing things and have built a brand doing it a certain way, and people have adapted. So it's really a thing of, you can either jump through hula hoops or you can do what you want to do and people will adjust. Again, that also really depends on your brand personality and all of that. If you are going for, like, for instance, you're an everyman and you want to be as relatable as possible, odds are you would want to sort of tweak and bend to what consumers are demanding for. But if you are a creator, or like, you innovate. Some people, you notice that some people set the trends, and an example of someone who has stuck to the way that he posts what he posts, for instance, is Chris Ju. Chris Ju has not changed how he posts in years. You know what I mean? Like, so that's how he posts, and you're going to have to either like it or you're not for him. So it's really a brand personality conversation, as much as brand personality conversation that really informs, do I pander to what customers or consumers are demanding for, or do I give them, because at the end of the day, while you're jumping through hula hoops, the truth is consumers are really looking for one thing: value. So if consistently you keep giving them in that format that it might not be the most exciting, but it's giving them value, odds are they're going to lean towards you than someone who is doing all of the acrobatics to, give them variety or whatever. So yeah.
Value, really important. Susan, we've talked about, or we've mentioned, the role that Archon played in the space this year. Would you want to speak on it a little bit in terms of regulatory activities and how it impacted the work that marketers and those in the marketing space have done or been able to achieve or not been able to achieve in 2023?
So I would say that ACON is a regulatory body appointed by the federal government to regulate, sanction, or censor advertising practices in Nigeria. So that being said, as a federal agency, it is saddled with that power, the power to do and overdo. So, but basically, their work is to ensure that there's some sort of sanity in the system, in the advertising space. So we have healthy communication, or like other countries where you have comparison. You have to take America. If I want to use America as an example, where you have competition outdoing each other. That sort of advertising is not accepted in our country, Nigeria. That being said, to be fair, they've done a great job by ensuring that most people that do not have business being in advertising, they are not practicing. So, for example, I'll start by talking about the influencers. Before now, influencers can just pick up content and then they talk about the brand and then they post there. They can play around words, but that's not acceptable. You have to be a pro. You have to have some sort of study or understanding of what the work is or what needs to go into the brand. So that's some sort of sanity that has been introduced into the advertising space, especially on digital space. Where I might be having a challenge is where they have stopped some of foreign brands. We have global brands. Let me not say foreign, global brands that are available in other markets. And most of these big brands are multinational. So they have advertising that they want to run. So I'll say a Coke, for example, is the multinational company. So they have adverts that they want to run in all of the markets. Same communication across all the markets. And for the fact that they have some sort of models and they're not of our color or of our descent or adverts, APCON is actually against you doing that. But in the long run, that sort of stifled the advertising revenue for, or I'll just say the marketing advertising budgets in a way, because some brands could not advertise as a ONG. So in a way, it affected, I would say, maybe by the end of the year, we're looking at advertising spend for 2023. That period, when you look at the period when that law was introduced, you will notice that there was like a dip because of this trend. But I'm also happy because they've been able to give some lenience to some brands that are global and have a reason to advertise. So they have introduced what we call foreign model variation, which gives you the opportunity if you have a case. So you come forward and say, my brand is a global brand because of XYZ, XYZ. We have to run this advert in Nigeria as well. It's not just running every other market. And they give you some leverage to run, and then you pay some sort of fee that is outrageous, but it's good. I like the fact that they put that. So it's better for brands, global brands, if you know that you want to really advertise in Nigeria, you really have to advertise to Nigerians, then you have to pay to advertise to Nigerians. So it's a good one, but that period when the law was introduced, it caused some kind sort of disruption to advertising space, because some companies had to pay most people that are working on multinational brands had to pay us for a pause on their campaigns for like maybe 3 months before they got this sorted.
Okay. Really, really important. And a lot of row has, actually, the Akron has been involved in Nigeria, in 2023. And most of the statements we sound like, what is this? But, well, we're sitting pretty fine with it now. Onyeka, was funding still an issue for marketers in Africa in 2023?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is why I keep referencing, I focus a lot, in this space. The people I tend to focus on to see how it's going to impact things is really the investors. The reason for that is if investment is drying up, then founders begin to become uncomfortable and they begin to really double down on expenses. Sometimes they even try to. Everybody knows marketing is important. Everybody knows, advertising, branding is important. But sometimes when, it becomes tough or runway is looking like, I need to extend this runway. How do I do it? Some would then start to justify how maybe we can take another approach, or maybe it's not, very necessary that we do this at this time. So it was definitely a struggle. And with what happened, just with funding this year, because I compared and just doing a compare contrast to 2022, there was a lot of inflow, a lot of cash flow and funding, and seeing how it dried up and started drying up in December, 2022, it really did influence the tactics for how, businesses started to go about customer acquisition. And if you look a little closely, you're going to see how a lot of, I would say, startups and scale-ups as well. There's, scale-ups that obviously you have scale-ups like Money Point, who still went very hard on advertising and stuff like that. But you would notice how a lot of people are taking the businesses or brands are taking a lot more sales-led approach, because even the investors are questioning the economics of scale. And how the question now becomes, it's not how do you become popular anymore, or would I say still influential, but it's not a popularity contest to these investors anymore. It's how much revenue is coming in and how much are you bringing in, and we're now looking at, did we make the right decision, and things like that. So all of these things happening has really impacted how much they're willing to spend in terms of marketing, or the consideration. It's something that has really gone into the consideration for how much should we be spending on marketing. And I think when you look at investment, and then you also look at the state of it's a global economy problem, but then levels that there's levels to things. Global economy, where you're dealing with a developed region, or you're dealing with a developed side of the world, or part of the world, that global economic downturn is different from what global economic downturn is here in Africa. So when you look at that as well, it's also impacted how people are going about things. But it's not to say that, that a lot of people have thrown away marketing. It's just saying the approach is maybe a little more creative. The budget is not as flamboyant as it used to be, or extravagant rather, as it used to be. Let's spend, let's experiment, let's do this. A lot more people are more cautious about experimenting now at this time. So, yeah.
what other challenges did you notice? What other challenges did the industry face in 2023?
In terms of marketing, and so I think it's also a thing of customer acquisition and then like customer retention. It's been a challenge in terms of bringing the cost down, and then this one has to do a lot with, like, when we look at the economy at large and then see what's happening, with dollar and like fluctuations and all of that. The cost of acquisition that maybe was last year is different from what cost of acquisition is now. Why my focus is a lot more on the funding side, where I'm seeing the challenges, or the viewpoints coming from the fact that people are spending this money to actually make money. So if they can't really balance out how, like if you want to get one customer, just how much it costs, right? How is that sustainable? And then how are we actually retaining these customers? So I think that's the challenge that I have observed in terms of how the cost of acquiring customers now here has skyrocketed, and also trying to find a more strategic ways to actually retain, because that's where really the money comes in from, being able to retain the customers so that they can have some lifetime value, So, yeah.
Susan, in your opinion, based on what you've noticed, what challenges does the marketing industry face in 2023?
Like she rightly said, the first thing on the list, on anybody's list, would be inflation. This has really impacted on how we do business and when we want to do business. So right now, brands have to have like strategic thinking sections for them to spend money. Before you have an initiative that you want to carry out, you really do not need, as long as the initiative is a laudable one, you really don't need to think about it too much. All you have to do is commit money to it and ensure that it's done. But right now, you have to prioritize, you have to think, which one should I do, which one shouldn't I do? So that inflation really impacted the industry. Another thing that I noticed from advertising industry aspects is data. So data has always been and is still the bane of advertising in Nigeria. It's a problem. We always say there's no data in Africa, there's no data in Nigeria. It's one problem and it's still a problem. Still dates. There's a media industry data that we use for planning as we speak. That data was supposed to be out, I think, around June 15, but as we speak, it hasn't been released yet. In fairness to the organizers, they're trying to, what's the word now? They are moving from another software to another one. So they're trying to transition. Yeah. So it's taking a longer period. So data is one thing that has really impacted the industry. As I'm speaking to you now, I'm already planning for next year. And I'm trying to think outside the box. What can I do? What am I using as my rationale for picking whatever I'm picking? So data and media inflation, or inflation generally, impacted the industry. Then in a positive light, because when I noticed that we now have 3D board, I was quite excited. And 3D designs are here to stay. That one has impacted the industry positively. And the rise of 3D boards, I saw like one the other day, and I was quite excited that, wow, this is here to stay. So brands are trying to consider how they can commit money into this. If it's an initiative that they need to do. So we're actually at the point where, or everybody's at the point, all brands, managers, account managers, brand managers, at the point where we are seeing how much we can commit to this, and if it's here to stay basically, and how it will at the end of the day influence the brand at large.
Thank you very much for that. Onyeka, you're giving thumbs up, to that data part.
Yeah, data thing is a struggle, and it's a huge struggle. Something that we committed to at SIT is being able to provide. When she says like, oh, she needs, like planning and all of that, And we focus on teaching these professionals like strategy and branding. And something that we realized is just in them, when I say like, oh, there's no intentional branding or there's lack of intentional branding in tech space in Africa, like Africa is the most unbranded continent. And then speaking about tech, it's just there's a lot more. Let's just say there's no branding, and you can quote me, but when
I sure will.
And we thought about it, something that we did, as a solution that we're providing, and we're looking to really scale it, is actually creating case studies on African brands that professionals can actually refer to. And the reason why it's so important is because if you're looking at Western resources, Western regions have Western problems, and their problems, just like how you can see YC investing in like a dog food company, for instance, that's a separate conversation. Here, what we're struggling with is relatively different. So to be able to see stuff that supports what is being built here, the problems that are being addressed here, is something that, a lot of marketers, a lot of people in the branding, marketing, advertising space actually need to be able to have a hold of, so that they can marry their solutions, see references of people who have built like them and built in the same climate, and marry that to the solutions that they are creating as well. So that's why I gave a thumbs up. It's a huge problem. As a brand strategist, I can tell you that it took me like 8 years of sitting across different industries and different companies to be able to even know what I know. But how many people are going to do that? How many people are actually going to get the privilege or opportunity to do that? So yeah.
Interesting. Wow. I hope that someone who's listening to this now can provide some solutions that would help those of us in the marketing and advertising space, and that we're also not just going to be looking for solutions, but we're looking at solutions that are local solutions, right? Local solutions to local and global problems. But moving fast and away from this, let's look at training, hiring, recruitment in the marketing and advertising space in 2023. I do not want to give any props, but I just want to ask how. Onyeka, what do you have in mind? Please just spill.
Susan, can you go first?
What is this?
Can you go first?
Are we talking about Jackma syndrome now or something?
There's so much.
What did you notice?
Yeah. What did I notice?
Yes, in terms of hiring, training, recruitment, firing, what were the major things that caught your attention?
So there's a reason why I decided to build what I decided to build, which is SIT, and I'm going to throw it out there, and I'm really curious to hear what Susan has to say. She mentioned Japa, and that is a pandemic on its own. And what that is doing is it's taking away the best of our talents. And you really can't blame anybody, because if you know that you have and I say best of our talent, meaning the expert level, or people who have the ability to grow into experts really quickly, because it's a gift that they have and all they need is growing. It's taking them out of the country. And I think what we are not even really understanding is how there's a scheme, right? And I'm not saying that this is bad, but there's a scheme by all of these countries that are opening up their doors to actually accept them into the country. There's a scheme and we are it's like we're dashing people quality talent. And now to the main point, there's Japa, and what that's leaving us with is low quality talent. And this is not take a jab at anybody, but before, when I started, working in this space, you would have gone through, you would have agency experience, you would have worked with relatively complex brands, you would have some really granular experience that make you a strategic thinker. I think one thing that we can say on this call, Susan and I, is that we are both sounding out strategy, and you can see that. But for the crop of talents that are actually coming up, there's not that. And there's the rise of tech startups, and what that's doing is it's opening up doors, it's creating doors of opportunities or job opportunities for young talent who have not been groomed and who don't really understand certain things, right? And you see somebody like who is, when you talk about marketing, you see someone who is social media marketing, but don't even understand if a brand is putting $50,000 to grow their social media brand. Do you not realize that that is an asset to the company? It's not vibes. So you have a crop of low quality talents, and it's a serious problem. And for you, how many people are going to hire experts, and how many experts are you going to have sitting in your company? How many can you hire at a time? That's the question. How many experts are you going to hire? There needs to be a mix. You're going to have some experts, you're going to have some that are coming up, and there's no. I can see what's happening in the sense of when we even talk about trainings, a lot of focus on overly niched. It's not a bad thing to learn product or whatever, overly niche that it doesn't, to broaden up their senses to, if you're going to work in a tech company and you're going to work, we're forgetting that if you come in and you say you're doing marketing, a lot of what people are aiming to, where that job is leading you to, is CMO. The job of a CMO is not just to sit on social media and market. That is management level job. And we're teaching people like overly specialized skills and not creating room for skills that broaden their perspective to think strategically, to be able to solve very, very complex problems. And it's really impacting the quality of people. You see people who, they can perform in product, they can perform in content, UX, UI. They don't know anything else about the company without realizing that marketing is supposed to shake hands with sales and supposed to shake hands with customer experience and supposed to shake hands with design and so many other factors in so many other areas in the company. So what we are left with, Japa wave aside, I think what we are left with is just a pool of low quality talents that at best we bring them up to very, very specialized skills. But if we look at the problem that we are solving in Africa, founders don't, yes, you need people who know that skill, but you need people who can support you in a larger capacity, because your resources, the kind of support you have already is limited. So that's what I would say about this whole marketing, the talent scape, in Africa. It's really, really bad. It's in a bad place. That's where I would leave it.
Wow. Just for records, people, it's Onyeka who took jabs at vibes, not me, just for the records. Yeah. Susan, what do you think?
So I agree completely with Onyeka. We have experienced lots of talents. This year alone, in my own unit, I know we lost like 6 persons. At some point earlier this year, I had to be the only one that was handling like 6 persons job.
That's
so yeah, I had to for like a while before they could get hands to. And the truth of the matter is that it's not everybody that is willing to work. It's not everybody that wants to learn. The kind of people that you have outside now, they are just interested in making quick money. They want to earn big. So they come to the agency, they just learn the process and they go somewhere else. And we have LinkedIn now. Someone will tell you he's a manager, he's a director. Meanwhile, he has not even done internship. He has not even finished internship. So we really do not have quality people interested in learning the ropes. Advertising is learning on the job. But then I was telling one young talent, but you need to have initiative, because I can teach you the work, but I will not teach you to think. I can't help you think, like she said. So nobody is going to help you think. You have to be a thinker to work here. You have to be able to challenge whatever brief you're given. You have to be able to challenge. That is why in advertising, you see that you have opportunity to call your oga by name. All of that is to encourage conversation so that you can share your ideas. So your guy is not alpha and omega. It's not good. It means that you can actually question, you can challenge whatever he's saying in advertising. That's why you use first name. So it's not because I'm calling you Mr. Anthony, I can't tell you what I think we should do. So you don't have people like that anymore. And really, I do not blame them. It's a function of our system. The system is corrupt. Everywhere is corrupt. Young talents are looking for, you see young girls, they're into Aristo. I want to make money, I want to just be fine, sitting pretty. Now, go say sitting pretty. You don't want to think outside the box. You just want someone to spend money on you. You go, you see young boys that are talented, they're supposed to learn one trade or the other, they are doing Yahoo Yahoo. So at the end of the day, when they are done with school, what is the same sort of people that are in school that you are turning out. So the system, the educational system is messed up. For us to fix every other sector, that sector needs to be fixed. I was listening to radio the other day and somebody was saying, why would doctors not japa? We are complaining about not having qualified hands to fill the positions in the hospitals based on, and somebody was saying, if the large chunk of the budget is allocated to another sector and the sector that is supposed to be funding, servicing that sector, which is the educational sector, is being sidelined, what do you expect? Everybody want to, so the good hands don't want to stay here. You're not even paying them well. They're not paying them well. They feel there's insecurity. So if they earn so much, they're going to be a problem in their community because everybody will come to their house. Not, I mean, of course, they won't be secure. So they need to look for a better environment to live, and that's why they will live. So this year, we witnessed a lot. It's not just in advertising; it's everywhere. But I think advertising was affected the most. Advertising and the health sector was affected the most. I can tell you because in my company, I know how many people left, and as I speak to you now, we've not even been able to replace some of those talents.
You can't. So where are you going to find them? You can't.
So is something that we really need to look at, and so the only way we can help people that are coming, because of course everything is about upbringing. It doesn't mean that majority of the people are this way, millennials or Gen Z, they don't want to work. But you still have some that are talented that they want to earn. They want to earn the right way. So I think it is proper for us to have a proper more like industry training academy. I know Akon has, but we should have like a general one where everybody wants to go into advertising, wants to go into marketing. Basically, this is where you need to come and learn all you need to learn before you now go and practice. So we need to be big on training. We really do not. You're not really big on training, except when you come into the industry, into the company, and somebody is teaching you. But I mean, as an industry, we need to be big on training. I say for you to qualify to work here, you need to XYZ do this, tick this box, tick this box, tick this box. So.
Onyeka, do you agree to the fact that we? I haven't even. I'm not even done with asking.
What she said, I agree.
Okay. So we need to put a little bit more structure to the standards, and
there's structure, yes. There's education. There's one thing. And what she said. It's a systematic problem. First of all, there's a grassroots problem that has not been addressed. And when we talk about people like wanting like fast money and all of that, it has to do with like mind framing. So how have their minds been framed? This is based off of what they've seen, the kind of leadership they've been exposed to. And I really think it is because when we even think about it and we think about education, when you sit in school, that's not what they're teaching. So it's not even a function of formal education. Which is why you have bodies like the UN that have actually, designed goals to actually meet certain level of training for informal education, right? And informal education can it comes in very different ways. Something that we're addressing, what she spoke about, is them not being able to think. I really think that people can be taught to think. It's who is willing to even teach these people how to think. Who's going to dedicate time to teach people to think? Because there's a method for actually thinking. There are people who can think and think rubbish, or think off point or nonsense, or they don't have a structured way of thinking. But you can teach people how to think. And I've done this. I have alumni. I've seen people. It's actually worked for them. So I think people can be taught to think. Not everybody is going to japa. And at the point where I think everybody in the industry needs to wake up and sort of collaborate is when you start seeing that at some point, the OG staff members that you have are no longer going to be there. They're going to move on. What are you left with at the end of the day? So it's coming to bite everybody in the bottom. At some point or the other, it will touch everybody. So it's for everyone to be proactive enough. I focused on teaching people how to think and how to, learn branding. someone else has to focus on teaching. And I think focus on things that can actually, when you think about designing solutions, also think about the context of where you are, and not just, teach somebody, I'll teach you this skill. The truth is, when you enter advertising, you're going to do, I worked in advertising, and I can tell you, I went from copywriting to project management to account management, brand management, client relations. You're not going to do one thing. Like, if you're good, if you're expert talent, you're not going to do one thing. So how do you teach people to be multifunctional and actually extremely valuable in companies? So it's a very, very deep problem that it can only be solved, like, again, strategy and I think education. People need to be educated outside of the four walls of what we think education really is.
Okay. For people who eat strategy for breakfast, I really feel that we'll be able to, strategize our way out of this particular challenge. Now, let's look at top picks, not moments now, but peaks. Yeah. In terms of campaigns or projects, which ones? And yes, you have a choice. Everyone has a choice here, and everyone has to make a choice. Which projects or campaigns do you think did great with their marketing or advertising this year, 2023? Let's keep it to 3. Yeah, top 3, and why? Susan and Onyeka.
I think Susan can go. I don't really have a top pick, and I don't know what the criteria for selection is.
It's totally based on your, whatever you think. So if we're looking at either campaigns or projects or anything that just comes straight to mind when you think of, this is a great job to reference, or this is something that it's great to actually reference, which would you be, and why do you think it's great to reference?
Okay, so first campaign or brand I'll be talking about will be Paddy Water. I think it did great, and why am I picking it as one of the brands that did greatly this year is because of the human connection. Water is essential, so they were able to bring that home, but not in all of the commercials, but some of the commercials were able to tell us. That storytelling part was there. It came out, and they were able to navigate us through this journey, how you need somebody to be there for you, and of course water is that essential.
Okay.
Then the second one is, I can't remember the name of the brand now, but it was on the Big Brother Nigeria, where I'm not sure it's OP, I think it's what brand though, where this babe went to get water, get to buy food. There's this your account name, having different account name, and maybe having issues with transaction. So where this lady went to buy food, and then at the end of the day, she tried to make payment, but the payment failed, but she was debited, and then she had to she was meant to sweep. What's the word now? She was meant to wash plates. So
okay.
It was quite functional, because most times you find yourself in a situation where it happens to everybody. You make payments, you've been debited, but the person it declined. Basically, it declined, but you have been debited, and then so it was quite functional. The brand.
Is this Money Point?
Yes, Money Point. Thank you. So it was quite functional. It was quite functional. So that's another pick for me. Which advert did I say again this year that was top notch for me? I'm still thinking when I get another one.
Okay, that's fine. Onyeka, you can also do persons or personalities too. Yeah, because I think that's okay, cool.
Yeah, I agree with you, because I think advertising or ad blind, I don't like ads.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, I don't like ads. I think it's too on the nose, and I think it's a little too forceful.
For someone who works in marketing, wow.
I don't like it. I think you're dealing with psychology, a way to ingrain a lot of things into people's brains. There's so many ways to do it. That is not like a TV screen. It's a personal preference. I'm not saying it doesn't work for other people. I don't like them. But I would say I really like Piggyvest. Piggyvest has never, and I'm not even talking about a specific campaign. I love all their campaigns. I really like Piggyvest, or I would say they are the brand. Would I say I would give them brand of the year? And I would say this because of, first of all, the product has advertised itself to me. They've never had to ever come to me to say a word. I capture or I see some of their ads every once in a while, but I also think that they've done a good job in terms of who they've used as the figurehead, which is their co-founder Odun, and the kinds of initiatives they're involved in. So that's what attracts me as well, also knowing that. And also the way that their employees seem to portray the brand as well is also very interesting to me. So that's one. The other one would be Advancedly. Advancedly because maybe I have a little bit of background information in terms of just how much they've been able to also scale. I think their initiatives really appeal to me because they are very impact focused and they are driving like accessibility to actual credits for small businesses across Africa, and the way that they've been able to expand rapidly. So that's sort of what I take note of, as opposed to what is consciously or what has been intentionally designed to be sold to me. I would look more at the statistics than anything else. Who else would I say? I mean, I've come across another personality I would say like I can relate with is Kennedy of Kipper. I really think that he's to be able to disrupt and do things a little unconventionally, but still be able to engage community because it's very unconventional. And when we see brands in Africa doesn't do so well with unconventional personalities. But he's been able to navigate being an unconventional personality and winning the hearts of like Nigerian Africans, even globally, because he's not a local figurehead. So those would be people that I would say that they've impressed me so far. So yeah.
Okay. Susan, do you want to add one more or let it be a wrap?
Yeah, it's a wrap.
Okay, that's a wrap. So finally, I want us to end on a note of ethics. Ethics within, marketing and advertising. How much work still needs to be done?
So in Nigeria, in regards to advertising, I would say that we are doing fairly good. So we still have some sort of work to do, but ethics is more of a personal or a corporate thing. So personally, we need to be able to reach out, especially those industry experts. They need to be able to reach out to younger talents in the industry and ensure that the ethics in the advertising space is what is currently being added to. So I would say that we've not really had much issue except for I think it was Easter period where all of the telecoms brand we've had it in the past, but we had another one this Easter period where all of the telecoms brand had to use the same concept for advertising, and it was basically approved, and Upcon didn't call that out because that was supposed to be. So I would say, based on my understanding, ethics has nothing to do with regulatory body. It's more of the industry giant, what is acceptable and what is good for the greater for everybody. What is the greater good for everyone? So as industry regulators or industry experts, we need to be able to hold our forward and ensure that the young talents are well groomed in this aspect. So I would say we are doing fairly good. We still have some work to do.
Okay. Onyeka, what are your thoughts?
Okay, well, I think in this landscape, the ethics they are pretty fair. To be honest, I don't think that we find any practice, or we don't find, well, not any, but I don't think that we find much practice that is outside of or out of line or a little too extreme, right? So I think all in all, fair. I'm guessing that that's also like being contributed largely by the actual regulatory regulatory bodies. So I'm guessing that it's been something that they have been able to maintain, right? We've not seen a lot of sanctioning, and so I think all in all, fair. I don't know if there is a standard for the ethics or the practices that we use, I'm speaking more in terms of advertising. I don't know if there's an actual standard or standardized practice system, and I'm guessing that there is, and maybe that's something that's been able to really regulate how we go about things here. So I would say fair so far. I don't have very huge opinions on the ethics that we use to practice here.
Okay. What are your wishes for Christmas and for the New Year, Onyeka?
My biggest wish for Christmas and the New Year is it has to deal more with talent. And my wish would be that we begin to appreciate the ones that we have here as raw as the talent may be, as maybe ungroomed. We begin to appreciate them and actually start to take initiative to groom them so we can keep them, do our best to groom them. Not everybody will stay, but I think we need to start thinking about actually keeping talent here.
Okay, and Susan, your wishes for December and Christmas and the New Year?
Personally, I would say good health and prosperity. For the industry, because I work in advertising, more advertising budgets. More advertising budgets to spend next year.
Onyeka is agreeing with you too, so I think
I'm praying more investment flows in. There are more investments in these companies. I pray they secure more investments because that's really what impacts a lot of the stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Talent, basically, because even when we have the budget and then you don't have good hands, at the end of the day, everything will not really work out to flow. So, talent and money to spend.
Susan likes money.
Who doesn't like money? More revenue.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Susan and Onyeka. Yeah, at the end of the day, I appreciate the fact that it was really interactive and we got into some gray areas, and we're also able to touch on some areas that ordinarily would have just left it at the topmost, but we got into some details and the gray areas importantly. Thank you so much for bringing your expertise to this podcast episode.
Thank you for having us. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to catch up on all the live shows right here on africatechradio.com.